You've probably gotten a pimple before and got impatient, so you decided to pop it. The next morning, you wake up and you're greeted with a dark spot in that area where you just popped your pimple. Now you're stuck with the bigger issue of getting rid of this dark spot. If you didn't already know, hyperpigmentation, otherwise known as dark spots, often come from popping your pimples. Getting rid of this hyperpigmentation can actually take longer than getting rid of the acne itself. So in all honesty, it's just not worth popping your pimples because it increases the chance of you leaving behind a dark spot. Unfortunately, even if you don't touch your pimples at all, there's still a decent chance that hyperpigmentation is left behind after your acne heals. Because this is such a common skin issue that people deal with, I'm going to be telling you 3 products that you can use to completely get rid of this hyperpigmentation as quickly as possible. And before we get into this, if you don't trust me, I actually had a dark spot recently that came after my acne healed, and I was able to completely get rid of this using these 3 products in under 5 days. The first thing you need to be using is a sunscreen. This is probably the most important thing in your skincare routine. The sunscreen is going to be protecting your skin from those UV rays. UV rays can cause many different things. I'm talking fine lines, wrinkles, skin cancers, and of course hyperpigmentation. Therefore, if you don't want the hyperpigmentation to get worse, make sure that you're always applying sunscreen. You need to be putting that sunscreen on just to make sure that your dark spots don't get any worse. There are many different sunscreens that you can choose to use. I personally use the Korean Birch Lab sunscreen. It has an SPF of 50. If you don't know what that number means, just think of it like this. The higher the number, the less likely you are to get sunburned. But any number above 50 is sort of unnecessary. So that's why you just need a sunscreen that's between the range of 30 and 50 SPF. In terms of how often you want to apply it, it just depends on you. If you go outside more frequently, you're playing sports, you're very active, then you want to be applying the sunscreen every 2 to 3 hours. However, if you're working a day job and you're not going to be outside that much, you can probably just apply it in the morning and you'll be good for the rest of the day. It can get pretty unnecessary if you're applying the sunscreen every 2 to 3 hours when you're not even going to be outside that frequently. Also, when it just comes to the cosmetics of using a sunscreen, I prefer using a sunscreen that doesn't leave behind a white cast, because there are a lot of sunscreens that you can apply to your face and it'll just make you look like a completely different complexion. And that's why I use the Korean Birch Lab sunscreen, because it doesn't leave behind a white cast. The next thing I make sure to use is a retinoid. If you don't know what a retinoid is, I'll put it in simple terms. Essentially, retinoids increase the skin cell turnover rate, so you're going to be able to replace and replenish skin cells much quicker. If you didn't already know, our skin cells are constantly peeling, so retinoids are actually just going to speed up this process. This means that we're able to get rid of those impurities in our skin much quicker, and in this case, the impurities I'm referring to is the hyperpigmentation or dark spots. If you're a bit confused, let me make a comparison. Let's say our skin is like an apple. We have the outer layer, and then we have the inside juicy layer that we're trying to eat. Basically, the retinoid is going to act like that knife, the knife that will peel the skin off the apple. And so because of this, we're able to access the inside juiciness of the fruit, and that's what we want. We want those new replenished skin cells which are below the surface of the skin. This is exactly why retinoids are so good when it comes to getting rid of hyperpigmentation. We're able to get rid of those dark spots in our skin and replenish them with much newer, healthy skin cells. So if you continue to use this retinoid, eventually the hyperpigmentation will go away and you'll have a completely even skin tone. Now do be aware that retinoids are quite difficult to get a hold of. In the United States, the only over-the-counter retinoid is adapalene gel from Different. For any other retinoids like tretinoin or isotretinoin, you're gonna be needing a prescription. And this becomes more complicated in other countries, because other countries you can't even get a retinoid over the counter, which is quite unfortunate. But don't worry, because there are more products out there that you can use to get rid of this hyperpigmentation. Now the third thing I used was a vitamin C serum. The reason why vitamin C is so good at getting rid of hyperpigmentation is because it prevents the production of melanin. Basically, hyperpigmentation comes from the overproduction of melanin, which is why that area is dark in the first place. However, there's actually an enzyme that creates this melanin. And so what vitamin C does is that it actually inhibits the enzyme creating melanin, which means that the production of melanin is reduced. And so that ultimately reduces the hyperpigmentation. Now there are many different vitamin C skincare products. I've personally been using the vitamin C Banish serum, and I've also been using the Radiant C Essence from Laneige. However, there are many other serums, cleansers, or moisturizers that have vitamin C in it, and it'll probably do the same thing. So if you use all 3 products that I've mentioned, you're going to be able to get rid of that hyperpigmentation as quickly as possible. Maybe not in 5 days, but it'll definitely accelerate the process that you get rid of the hyperpigmentation. Now those are the 3 products that I use when it comes to getting rid of hyperpigmentation, but here are some bonus products you could also use. One thing that you can use is niacinimide. It actually is an acne treatment, however you can also use it for dealing with hyperpigmentation. It's going to reduce the appearance of dark spots and an uneven skin tone. You can also use kojic acid, which is sort of similar to vitamin vitamin C because it does inhibit the enzyme that creates melanin. It's also an exfoliator, so it's not only going to block the melanin production, but it's also going to turn over skin cells. Finally, you can also use azelaic acid. Just like other ingredients I've mentioned, it can block the production of melanin. It's also helpful at dealing with inflamed acne, which is obviously going to be helpful because hyperpigmentation often is a result of acne not healing properly. If you need any specific skincare advice, DM me on Instagram at choice.yt, and peace.